Oh boy, faction design. So the COH3 factions, American and Brit. I haven't loaded up the Austere or the Wehrmacht. I saw AE had done that on stream or on his YouTube. I need to try to do that and take a look. But there are a couple of important pieces to take away from this. Traditionally, the British faction is basically set up so that they are a slow defensive faction and they have emplacements, and then the Americans are kind of faster. But guess what I haven't seen? I have not seen emplacements. I've seen little MG bunkers you can put up, and the fact that when Relic presented COH3 for the first time on stream, they were talking about breaching, and the fact that players were complaining that buildings would slow combat down, and they're trying to make, and I wish I had quoted them here, but they're trying to set this up so that the game can be more aggressive. They were explicit in this desire, and it shows. And that's so important. I can't stress enough how important that is. So we're looking at things like breaching to make it so that buildings aren't these monolithic, like, pieces of sludge that slow the entire game down. We're also looking at either, well, at a minimum, far, far less generic emplacements. Like doctrinal stuff, I'm not going to get into that too much, but what we're seeing early tells you where they are feeling they want to go. And so, like the faction design, do they have a weapon support? When do things tech up? Blah, blah, blah. You start with all your buildings when you jump into skirmish. All right. So trying to figure out what the factions are actually going to look like from a design perspective it's not that easy to do, but you can look at what they're providing us up front, and it looks good. It looks good, which is great. So, I'm actually going to quote this DevM quote right here because I think it's worth repeating. Even though the COH2 does do some things good, it's worth repeating this from DevM. Faction design in Company Heroes 1 was in many ways superior to Company Heroes 2. Many of the basic tools were already there without the need for a commander, and the original factions played out in interesting ways due to the high costs associated with any major teching decision. What COH2 factions have going for it is a more noob-friendly approach. I believe a compromise can be reached between the two for the next iteration. There was always a more noticeable distinction in game phases in COH1, where good infantry players could finish the game on that alone without even letting the opponent get a single vehicle out. COH2 suffered through the patches from heavy, light vehicle play that silenced any good infantry play as early as sometimes 4 minutes into the game. I believe that is one of COH2's flaws, and that has been bandaged and somewhat fixed for now, but it should be looked at carefully in the future. And the Company Heroes 3 setup right now, again, it's very hard to look at the factions when you start with almost all the buildings and know when things are going to happen, but everything DevM just said is 100% correct. Being able to set this up for distinct phases would be huge. I also like clown cars are more or less common. Yeah, jibber jabber. Clown cars are... There are like ways to kind of mitigate how dumb they are, but they're clown cars are awful. Clown cars cause so many problems for everybody. It's not just the fact that it's dumb and it breaks a bunch of the fundamental mechanics, which it does, but when new players come into the game and they're not given a chance to do anything because light vehicles are so overpowering, and anyone who kind of knows what they're doing are just gonna bop this new player and just it's awful.